Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Jason Flores, and I'm here with our coaches from the Endurance Lab, and this is Coach's Corner. Today, we're going to be covering a couple topics with our coaches, but before we do that, we're going to do a quick roundtable and find out what's going on with the coaches this week. We're going to start off with Taya. Taya, how was your week this week?
Hey everyone, the week was exciting just because I have been doing very challenging workouts and some new things too that have been challenging my weaknesses. So it's been a very busy week as well with finishing up the schedule for the next lab that starts on Monday.
Yeah, it's been a big rush getting ready for that lab. And for those lab riders, you know, if your coaches are doing hard workouts, you know what's coming up in the next 8 weeks, right? All right. Andrea, across the pond, tell us what's going on.
Oh, winter is totally kicking my butt this week with trying to get the double training sessions in. But I just had a great swim and had a really interesting chat with a friend of mine who's a nutritionist as well about the pool and how it affects our skin with the itchy scratchies, and how, I don't know if there's any swimmers in the group, but vitamin C and taurine may be helpful as well as swimmer shampoos. So yeah, we were chatting about that. I think I'm a bit super sensitive to it all. So that was interesting.
That's interesting. It's good. Ian and Mitch keep really short hair. They really don't have issues with the swimmer's hair, right, guys?
Oh, I still get the dry, crispy, crunchy hair from the pool sometimes.
Is that not just your hair gel, Ian? All right, Mitch is sounding a lot better this week. Mitch, how's it going?
Yeah, so I'm still a little sick. I'm still getting there, but what's interesting for me this week is I prematurely sold my power meter. I'm in the process of getting a new one. So I'm doing things by perceived exertion and heart rate, which is kind of it's a nice change, and it's a nice way to go back and look and think about some things as far as from a riding perspective, and really thinking about where is that effort level. It's like kind of riding blind a little bit, but it's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, definitely could be an eye-opening experience for that. But that's interesting. All right, Ian, what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm freezing in Miami. It's like 40 some odd degrees here. It's miserable. I had to fly out for a conference and do a fitness test, and that turned out real well. Got a little boring at the end of the run though, as I finished 2.5 minutes ahead of the next closest person for 2 miles. But yeah, definitely been a busy week of conferences. Not much working out except for the running, and I hate the cold weather. I reaffirmed that.
So I guess the gauge is, how cold is it there where you're at, Ian?
It's 44 this morning, 45 this morning. It was 42 yesterday when we were running in shorts and t-shirt, and I'm used to like the lows in Santo Domingo are like 71. That's when we break out jackets.
Yeah, so it's about 5 Celsius. That is not so bad.
It's horrible. This is torture.
Oh, you're gonna hate California, Ian. When you come here next week, you're gonna hate it.
I've already packed my arm warmers, my knee warmers, my toe warmers, my gloves.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and for me, it's been a busy week. Just like all of us here, we're working hard, getting this lab going. I'm really excited to see this kind of move forward. And if you haven't joined our next lab, definitely look into that. But some great workouts. I've been working hard on getting everything converted over for all you guys. So I do a little bit of the coding on the backside for all the things to make it happen as far as workouts are concerned. But you guys are going to really enjoy that. I've been looking at them, and all I see is blue bars, as Taya calls it, looking at the Training Peaks workout. So it's going to be great. All right, let's jump straight in. We're going to go to This Week in the Lab. I'm going to throw it to Ian. Tell us why does it feel like it's getting harder even though it's the end?
Well, one of the things we always say is it never gets easier. You just get better, or faster, or stronger. So as we get into this, there's a little bit of fatigue in there, but mostly it's because everyone is actually able to do more of the strength, more of the workouts, do it a little bit harder, do it a little bit faster as needed, and so it sometimes has a perception of being harder, or the perceived effort is harder, but we're getting more done. So there is that. You're actually doing more work, expending more energy in these workouts because you're more capable now. So it is part of that. And one of the things I want to talk about real quick on this, as we finish out this week in the lab, take everything you've done and continue it forward. You don't have to do 3, 4, 5 workouts a week for strength, but we want to keep that going forward and not lose those gains, to keep that core stability throughout the rest of the year and maintain some of that strength that we have throughout our body.
Absolutely. So right now, a lot of the riders are doing about 3 workouts a week. If people were going to, obviously if they're going to go into the next stage of this, they would continue with our schedule. But if you're mentioning maintaining, how many would you say people would you see athletes or you subscribe to maintain, let's say, like you're saying?
Yeah, so I like to do 2 to 3 a week still, but I'll do varying degrees. So they won't be necessarily 3 hard ones. There'll be maybe 2 like what we've been doing, and then I'll throw 1 or 2 of the 15-minute type workouts like Taya has on the video, because those are great. It's somewhat of a warm up, it's somewhat of a stretch, but it's also got some strength in there. So those little 10 to 15-minute ones also add up over time. And so, for example, when I'm doing my 70.3 or iron distance training, I make sure I have 2 days a week that I make sure I get a 25 to 40-minute strength workout in, and I can get a lot accomplished with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'll comment too that
Makes sense.
consistency is key. So even if you bring that way down to fewer hours and a week, that's fine, as long as you do something every week. That consistency will go a long way.
Exactly.
That's a really good point. All right, let's go to Taya with our continued base work and some really, really interesting workouts, and then we can kind of see how the SST last week kind of panned out for everybody.
So this week we had another high cadence workout. This one, it was deceivingly hard just because it was 2 minutes on for high cadence and 1 minute off, but 10 times. So different than the 5-5-5 that we did earlier, that we had a 5-minute break. This one, even though it was about the same amount of time in high cadence, it was quick and not a lot of recovery in between. So it was something that people felt a little bit more. But nevertheless, that they were ready to do just because we have been working on cadence skills. The other workout of the week was the sweet spot that was 2 hours long. So that was quite different for a lot of people that were not used to doing that amount of sweet spot work. It was 4 blocks of 20 minutes, and we can go into a little more details when we talk about the hot topics here in the lab.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, so let's make it over to some of the hot topics in the lab. I'm going to start it off with just something that I posted just about a day or so ago, and it's gotten some traction here. One was asking riders what their resting heart rate were. And along with that, the reason why I had brought that up is just for people to take a gauge of where they're at, and kind of just another marker of kind of how they're getting rest, and something that they can look at to be able to find out what's going on with their body. Obviously, there are some gauges of how you're supposed to take it, and that sort of thing. Ideally, first thing you wake up, letting yourself be rested, like let's say for 30 seconds to a minute. There are some fancy gadgets that can do this as well. But really, this article that I posted was something kind of an entry conversation to what I would really like to kind of move forward, talk about it, which is HRV, which is just the variability between the heart rates. And I'll move forward with that conversation in the next week as we talk a little bit more about that. But back on resting heart rate, just kind of getting a gauge of where you are normally. And you may be different, let's say, from our next athlete that's posting next to you as far as their numbers, but you just need to kind of gauge where you're at. And as it changes, some of our athletes and coaches have shared that it can tell us how we are as far as how rested we are, or if there's a possibility that the body is fighting something. So very, very important. Any other experiences from the other coaches as far as resting heart rate and our athletes?
Yeah, that's one of the things. I just actually posted something in Endurance Lab about it because one person asked what all this means. It's very important to understand that if you just take your resting heart rate today, or I just take my data from a workout today, that doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. The heart rate, understanding your heart rate over time, the more data you have in there by taking one datum is really important. And if you only look at it for a very brief, short period of time, you're not going to have a good understanding of what anything actually means. It's about how does it change this week, vice last week, vice 6 months ago, and knowing what those different variables that can affect that heart rate are too. And that's those key parts is data over time and understanding the different variables.
Absolutely. And Andre, you have done a little bit with HRV before, right? We could bring in a whole topic, but you feel like just a short summary, could you kind of introduce the topic from how you understand it?
I think I've been watching the heart rate variability data for a while, and I think we need to make sure that the method we're using is accurate and documented, and also how we interpret the data is very important. Heart rates as well are very interesting because with chronically fatigued athletes, their heart rates tend to drop. So you're seeing less of a rise rather than it being fitness. So it's important to kind of watch what your normals are and watch when things go off. And then with the heart rate variability, we've started using it in this house. We're waiting for a CoreSense to come. They're still in production at the moment, and they're claiming that they can measure the HRV far more accurately from a finger device. So
Wow.
yeah, I think it's important to kind of start tracking the numbers and then look at how your lifestyle might be impacting them and is it making sense, and then sort of building up information about yourself. I think it's helpful for looking at if you're doing a lot of travel or if you have a lot of stress or if you're not getting enough sleep. They're the things that you really want to look at how they're impacting you, and then your training quality from there. I think it's really, really interesting. I think we're still in the process of understanding it.
Absolutely. So definitely a topic worth bringing back. So we'll post a couple of links, and we can have that conversation in the forum. All right, over to Taylor here. Let's talk about some topics. I know you were teasing about how the 2-hour workout went. Let's kind of share how it went and do some summaries here. What do you got?
So again, a lot of our participants in the lab were not used to doing workouts for 2 hours. Riding for 2 hours, yes, but not necessarily having to sustain a level of effort for that amount of time. So there was quite a bit of conversation before the workout, what can I do to prepare? And we brought those in last week's lab when we talked about, for example, nutrition before that type of workout. So what we have been reading across the board here from our participants is that many of them were pleasantly surprised that they were able to do it. But really, you have been, all of you members of the lab and athletes here, you have been working hard for the past 6 weeks and building up to it. If you look back at your schedule and your data, you have been building the endurance and the strength to be able to sustain that workout. And so this is really a result of that. We even had one of our participants do that workout on rollers, which is not an easy achievement for 2 hours there. The other topic I wanted to bring up is something that has been discussed in the lab this week, differences in power between a power meter reading and, for example, the trainer that people are using connected to Zwift. That people notice, for example, let's say somebody has a kicker, that's a good example, and they're using that for power reading with Zwift, but then they go put a power meter on their bikes or they go outside, and the difference is sometimes significant. Sometimes it can be 20 watts, and one is higher, one is lower. Which one is accurate? Well, there's a lot of information out there from DC Rainmaker and Titanium Geek and how, which one is more accurate than the other. And you're welcome to take a look at some of those links. We can post those as well. But I think the key message here is to be consistent. For you to be able to have an idea of your progress and what you're doing inside versus outside and over time, it's important that you use the same source. So that way you're comparing apples to apples, obviously. So that's the comment there. And lastly, in terms of using a trainer tire, that Andrea had an experience with that as well, on how the reading for her power was lower by the way that tire trainer was set up. So all of those things can cause a difference.
Absolutely. So for most of our athletes, as we do get set up, a lot of the first questions that we have or recommendations are if in fact they have a power meter, that they should be using that both indoors and outdoors so that they're using the same numbers. So absolutely some great advice. It just drives both riders and coaches kind of nuts when, it's close enough and and oh, this one is off by this and then. If we just use the same power meter, it can really simplify a lot of athletes' lives too. And then as far as trainer tires go, even changing in between tires, things can definitely go awry. So definitely look at that and keep those tire pressures up. And don't forget to put air in the front tire as well, just because it could be bouncing all around when you stand up and move around. So don't forget to put air up in there, up in the front as well.
Oh, a comment about the front tire. The other thing that it does is it changes your position on the bike. And now all of a
can.
sudden you're getting sore from it. That's because your position changed from being lower in the front.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It also could be moving around a little bit differently too. So it's all the craze right now for the bike to be able to move around, but we want it to be kind of in a predictable way. So I think the basics are very, very important. Is consistency and be able to just like as we talked about heart rate, to be able to compare change over time. That's the number that us coaches are looking at. So that's great. All right, Andra is going to tell us how to clean up our supplement shelves in our house and throw away all the stuff we don't need. So Andrea, what should I take this morning after this?
Yeah, with supplements, I suppose when I first started out in nutrition 15, 20 years ago, my approach would have been that of a pharmacist. So I probably was a little heavy-handed. And just through time, experience, reading research, looking at the strengths of diet, I've kind of changed my views. And I think always when we ask ourselves, do I need to take a supplement? We first need to step back and look at our diet, look at our sleep patterns, look at our training balance, our stress management, and our environment, and see what can we change there. Then we need to ask, do I need a supplement? Why? Do you actually understand why you're taking that supplement? Does it work? Are you just listening to marketing, or are you looking at the real data and science? Because the marketing is not regulated. They can say what they want. Does it cause harm? Is there a chance of side effects? If you're a pro or a drug tested athlete, could it cause you a failed drugs test? And this is topical at the moment because there are even products that are going through NSF or informed sport testing, and athletes are failing and claiming it's the product. And then they've gone back and tested the product and they've found that there's something in there. I don't know how it's happening. I don't know how some of the drugs that are found in the supplements are in the same factory, but it's a very real issue. And careers are ended because of it. There was even a product on course in Australia that was failing a drugs test in a gel. Amazing. It's gone crazy. So you need to be very, very careful. Then we need to look at whether there's ever an interaction between the supplements that we're taking, the herb or the nutrient, and any medication that may be taken. A lot of people working in stores don't have an in-depth understanding, and it's very, very complicated, especially when we come to herbs and how they may interact with drugs. So you need to seek expert advice. And then looking at product quality. We tend to get what we pay for, and you do want to have quality. So these are things to think about before you even buy something. I do believe food should be our first port of call. Food is packaged up in a way where everything has a synergistic effect between the nutrients and the antioxidants, and it's in balance and it works with your body. So do try and make food, really important before you start just horsing in a load of supplements. And look at where you can change and where your limiting beliefs are. Are you being lazy? Is there behaviors that need to change regarding your food? So then, what do we do then when we're looking at, do I need a supplement? Well, we need to do an assessment on our health, and we need to do an assessment on our training. And areas that an athlete can think about are energy balance. Do we need short-term support for the adrenals with adaptogens, our immune systems, the musculoskeletal system, our hormones, and our gastrointestinal health? Sometimes in the short term, we do need to supplement to bring these back to full health and then use diet from there on. And then with our training, what are our goals? Where do we need to troubleshoot some problems? And do we need to bring in a supplement just to help us? So first off, think, is there a food solution, or is there a short-term solution we can use a supplement for? For example, we may want to support the musculoskeletal system, but bone broth may be good enough. Or if we need more magnesium, greens may be enough. Or if we need more antioxidants, then adding in more color where it's all balanced up. So kind of run through that sort of list and anything else that might be relevant to you. And then it's looking at, well, where do we get our biggest bang for our buck? So things that you may want to consider are vitamin D, probiotics, perhaps an omega-3 or a cod liver oil or a krill oil, phospholipid support for the cell membrane. So krill oil, for example, would have phospholipids in there, or there are some straight phospholipid supplements, which are really, really interesting. Adaptogenic herbs. I'm just going to leave them as a whole group, but there are lots of them and they're very, very cool. And I do use them a lot in the clinic to support athletes. Magnesium tends to drop short in a lot of athletes, and especially women. Looking at whether we need a short course of B12 or iron, but please get your blood levels checked first before you just take supplements. Do we need some protein, whether it's vegan or whey? I think this is one that's always brilliant to have in the cupboard so that you can have it when you need it. You can use it for cooking or baking things as well. It's very, very handy. Then we have our training and race specifics, and we have touched on these a lot. Again, look at quality. Keep the formulation simple. Some products will have, this massive list, but they will have what is called a proprietary blend. A proprietary blend full of lots and lots of things looks fantastic. But if you know your numbers when it relates to a dose, often there isn't enough of anything actually in there. So you're better keeping it simple and then adding in other things on top if you need. Specifically for athletes, I feel plain creatine monohydrate at a lower dose for endurance athletes, maybe 2 to 3 grams, can be really helpful. Maybe taken 5 or 6 days a week so that you don't have to do cycles on and off. Caffeine, highly proven for sport, for performance benefits. So caffeine is one to think about in racing. And maybe bicarbonate or beta-alanine, but bicarbonate tends to cause some side effects with the tummy. They're sort of the main ones that I would think about before getting too complex. So I don't know how that relates for everyone. Coaches, what do you think?
Well, Andrea, I know one of the things you mentioned about the supplements, that's a huge deal, especially in the pro triathlon community right now. There's been a number of athletes who have had their supplements contaminated due to the production. Much of that happens over in China at facilities that produce a variety of different things. And then there's not the quality control and the cleaning of the equipment, which is what causes that cross-contamination. So anyone who's doing an event where they're likely to be tested or possibly going to be tested needs to make sure that their supplement maker is guaranteeing the quality control at the production side.
Yeah, I think
massive problem.
I think quality is super important. Like Ian said, especially for us athletes, and I think even for just the everyday athlete, just because you don't want that other junk or whatever other contamination that's in there. And some of the interviews that I've done in the feed zone, some of the questions that come straight up is always, if I get tested. And now supplement companies are now providing, documentation of athletes that have been tested and have shown to be clean. And I think it's something that's now in the forefront of all minds. So yeah, some really great comments there. All right,
but
great.
These ones
all right,
are even failing, Jason. There's been more sport and NSF products. Yeah, It's very scary.
Nuts. Yeah, it's just so nuts out there. It's unfortunately with the supplement world, and I deal with it in my clinic as well. It's just the Wild West. There's no regulation on even on your guys' side as far as the government, and even here in the U.S. It's just wild. It's just wild. Like you can do whatever you want. All right, so I am going to throw this over to Ian, and he's going to talk about a couple things that he found that we want to highlight this week in the lab. So go ahead, Ian. Let's hear it.
Yeah, Jason, I'm just going to hit on one thing. The other, because I have to get out to a work event here shortly. I'm going to cover the bike travel next week, and I'm going to go into some pretty hefty detail as a well-seasoned bike traveler. Travels with their bike a lot. But this week I want to cover one of the things that came up in the lab, and that was the dead spot in the pedal stroke. Now, we all have it. Everybody has it. There's actually GCN, I think, just did something recently where they were looking at the pedal stroke of pros versus regular people and the efficiency and pulling down and push or how their force goes through and the how you actually put your foot at the bottom of the pedal stroke. because the common myth, or I don't say it's a myth, but the common guidance is treat it like you're scraping mud off the bottom of your shoe. And at the end of the day, though, that's not necessarily the best way to do it, but that's the easiest way to explain to someone that you have to pull up on the way up. And what they found was they couldn't actually measure effectively the pros as they were pulling up, but they did notice that there was a spike in power through the big part of the power stroke on the way down. And but in their pedaling efficiency, when you looked at like on a spin scan, was actually below average of what the recreational rider was. But that's because they couldn't quantify or account for that pulling up. And all the pro riders acknowledge that they pull up on the backside of their stroke. So as you start looking at our pedaling efficiency and you're working through that dead spot, it's really the focus is not necessarily making it where it's a smooth from the constant push of power through the entire pedal stroke, but making sure that you're getting constant movement through it, that you're not doing herky jerky with the pedal, that there's not a simple push down, sliding it back, and a consistent pull up where there's no real degradation of power on that pedal up or down, but that you are actually putting pedal or power down and up. And so it won't look pretty necessarily on a spin scan, but it will allow the mitigation or reduction of that dead spot.
Yeah, and I think the little bit of work that we do here, and the advice that us as coaches that have been given to you guys as lab riders to just do a little bit of that, whether it be during cool down or an actual full workout, can really make the difference. A couple minutes a day or a workout even throughout a week can make a big difference. Well, that's awesome. I know you're off, Ian.
Well, one more thing on that, and I'll say, and this is one I just also responded to a lab rider, was in this one you're going to look really, really silly. So if you're concerned about getting weird looks, do it in the privacy of your own home. Like, stand up and you either put your hands on a table or against the wall and move one leg at a time, because if you try to do both legs, you'll fall. One leg at a time in a pedaling motion, you're actually going to feel that you have to pull up because there's nothing obviously pushing down on the other side to get that foot up. And so if you just do those one-legged pedaling drills while standing and not having any resistance, you'll feel that need to pull up and where you have to pull up to get through that dead spot.
Yeah. So the neuromuscular system is just so quickly adaptable, and the small muscles that require what Ian's talking about really need to be trained. So yeah, take all this information within heed. So excellent. I know you're off, Ian. I know I will be seeing you in about 7 days or so. Isn't that right?
That's correct. You'll see me actually 1 week from today.
That is super exciting. He's going to make me do single leg everything next week. So that is
Push-ups.
And lots of standing and climbing up the big mountain.
So really quick, a side note. So Justin and from Wagner's Wagon, they decided they want to see you do push-ups while Quan does push-ups on top of you while I stand on top and live stream the whole thing. So we're going to see if we can make that happen.
We'll figure out something. It probably won't be quite that.
All right.
And
Well,
clap
thanks for.
at the same time.
Yes, there you go. And clap at the same.
And we'll have to be shirtless if Andy has anything to say about it.
Oh my gosh. All right. Thanks for joining in. We'll get you on over there to that conference, and I'll see you next week. All right. We're gonna slide on. We're gonna slide on over into bed here with Mitch. He's got some information about the importance of sleep for all you lab riders. So
That's right.
Mitch.
We're gonna have a pillow talk with Mitch right now.
All right.
No, and actually, this is it's interesting. We heard the word sleep come up a few times during the conversations on the heart rate variability and on supplements. And it's really one area that I know and I've known for the last couple of years I've got to really improve if I want to maintain and really grow my fitness, and that's sleep. And I'll give a shout out to datadrivenathlete.com for helping with this. His website had a really great article on sleep and really summarized the importance of it. So first, you kind of got to go back and say, what's normal for sleep? So if you do a survey of the United States citizens, you come out that most adults get about 7 hours. And I'll tell you that when I have morning workouts, I'm targeting, I have a bare minimum of 6 hours for me to decide that I'm going to work out in the morning. And I'm usually getting between 6 and 7. So I kind of fall in that bucket. But if you go through the studies, it says actually that healthy adults, so if you want to be a healthy adult, you need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep regularly. So consistent 7 to 9 hours of sleep. But then what's even more fascinating is that for athletes, right? So we know that if we're training regularly and we're really pushing our bodies and we're really trying to improve our fitness, we're stressing our bodies. So healthy athletes actually require 9 to 11 hours of sleep. This is from studies that are documented, which is completely fascinating to me because I look at it and boy, am I falling short on that aspect of my training. So then you ask yourself, so if you're Mitch Dangermond and you're only getting about 6 hours of sleep per night, what's the long-term impact of getting less sleep than you need, especially when you're an athlete? So they've done studies and they've seen that it actually results in disturbances or reductions in your cognitive capacity, so your ability to think and clearly figure out things. Reductions or disturbances in your glucose metabolism, so your ability of your body to metabolize the food that you're putting in for your energy. Appetite regulation, which is also fascinating to me, is that so my ability to regulate and really make sure that I'm eating the right amounts and maintaining my weight correctly. Immune function, which I think we all know, if we really push ourselves hard and get a lack of sleep for a while, we all seem susceptible to colds and illnesses. It also results in chronic mental fatigue. And then I thought this last one was really interesting was you can get disturbances and an impact on your autonomic nervous system, which can then simulate overtraining. So you're not necessarily overtrained, but your body's giving you all the signals that you are. And so it's really impacting your ability to, get stronger. So the studies in the article goes on and says, because we all experience this, what happens if you just get a really lousy one night of sleep before a key workout or maybe before a race, right? We all get those pre-race jitters and, you can't get to sleep and you're tossing, turning all night. For well-trained athletes, they found that this actually has really little impact and you should be fine on race day. So don't stress that one too much. But really the key again is that if you're going to be training regularly and you've got an event, you want to have consistent training, you need to have good sleep. So what are some ways that you can actually improve and train yourself to sleep better? One is you need to have a regular bedtime and a wake up routine. So you're going to sleep at the same time, waking up at the same time, because this really gets your body into a natural rhythm where you're getting that consistent sleep and you're really in a consistent pattern. We've all heard that naps are good. When I was in the Navy, I consistently took a nap every day for about 45 minutes, and it was one of the best things ever in my life. But you can't make them too long, right? So I've actually read studies that say that the ideal nap is like 15 to 30 minutes. Don't be taking an hour, 2 hour nap because that's going to impact your ability to sleep later in the day. This one was actually interesting too, is that you want to evaluate the room that you sleep in and you want to get rid of anything that provides light or could actually arouse your mind in the middle of sleep. So cell phones, TVs, alarm clocks, other electronics are really not good things you should have in your room where you're sleeping consistently. And then you can also use meditation at bedtime. So those are all key things that you can do to help improve your sleep. And really, we all know, and this is one of my mantras, is that consistency equals success, right? So if you're going to train for an event, you need to have consistent training. And if you're going to achieve that consistent training, you've got to prioritize your sleep. So you've got to look at it and you got to figure out, what are you going to give up to get that sleep? Because we all only have 24 hours in a day. And if you need 9 to 11 hours of sleep, you need to start planning from there and work your workouts and your life and your bedtime routines around that. Jason, you still there?
I am. Sorry about that. Yeah,
okay.
Nate Dunn did a great job. And
Yeah.
Mitch, wow, what a great summary there for our lab athletes. There have been stories of pro teams where they have soigneurs go into the rooms that they're staying and go through and tape down all the lights, remove all the alarm clocks, make sure that it has, blackout curtains and that sort of thing. And that's the kind of like next level stuff that as far as even on that, world tour level that they are trying to make sure. So for us, taking just a couple of these things that Mitch had mentioned are super important to try to get better sleep. I've talked about an app that I use to get an idea of kind of like when you go to sleep and when you wake up. And a lot of times you could actually get yourself up just a little bit earlier because you can work with the cycles that you have with the time that you have, for example, on a workout day, like Mitch mentioned. So it's a really great app. Maybe grab the name of it here. But if you are looking at how much sleep you are getting, the round number of 7 to 8 hours is definitely really important. but the app that I use is called Sleep Time, and it works on how many cycles of sleep that you can get from, let's say, the moment you're going to go to sleep, also considering how long the average time taken, anywhere from 14 to 7 minutes for people to actually go to sleep. So any other experience from the other coaches here today as far as like sleep and with our athletes?
I'm the dark room person and have always been. I was brought up like that from childhood. And so it's actually a cause of marital discussions.
Oh man. So it's the husband with his cell phone, his laptop, and all the things turned on in the middle. Yeah. And you're just like leaving them outside.
Yeah, and me going around the room throwing pieces of clothing on top of every single light to just get him to go away.
That's pretty awesome. Oh yeah, I think I have a feeling my 5-year-old will be the same with with all the stuff that I've learned. With the blackout curtains and just making sure everything's quiet. And he's always slept with just a low amount of white noise, and he really enjoes that because it kind of blocks things out for him. It's his little comfort thing. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. We'll have to see as he grows up. So awesome, great job, Mitch. That is really interesting. All right, let's switch gears here to our lab rat of the week. Tia, you've got some experience with this rider. I know she's been really involved in the forum and really maybe only been involved in all of this for a short period of time. Can you tell us the story?
Yeah, so this is Reshma. This is her second lab, and Reshma is fairly new to indoor cycling and training. She has been Zwifting for only 5 months, and she had great success with this week's 2-hour sweet spot workout. So it was something that she was really thinking about ahead of time and planning and asking all sorts of good questions that were helpful to all other members to participate in. But she did it, and she was really happy to find out that she was able to do such long workout, and it wasn't as daunting as she expected. She had a good breakfast, she was prepared, and so she was very happy with the result. And kudos to you, Reshma. It's really, I mean, for somebody who has been doing training for only 5 months on a bike, this is outstanding. And I would also like to add a shout out to Lindsay. Lindsay also this week had a breakthrough with her longest ever ride on a trainer. And typically when she goes outside, she doesn't ride for as long as 2 hours. She has had some hip issues in the past and also some IT band problems. And so a lot of pain that goes into spending a lot of time on the bike. But she mentioned that the lab and the progression of the workouts combined with the daily core routine, the 15-minute video that I posted, is really helping her. And so she was able to do this workout without stopping, without low back pain or pain in the knees and the hips. So kudos to you too, Lindsay. Just great results here this week.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have definitely found success stories with that 15-minute workout. If riders are looking for something to do that would help them throughout the week to kind of move their progression forward and get rid of some of that lower back pain. Even riders that were having some kind of weird, kind of quirky feeling going through that movement kind of activated the muscles that would require stability in that area to allow kind of things to wake up, to be able to stabilize themselves the next day, doing it before, let's say, going to bed or something like that. So it's been a great staple for the athletes that I've been touching and talking to about it. So, all right, we're going to move on to on the horizon. We've got a really great week planned. We are on the cusp of starting our second lab. It is our more, I guess, would be traditional base lab. We will be moving into a lot more work as far as in comparison of what we're currently doing now. I think it's going to really build on what we're doing now. You're going to be doing a good amount of SST work, but not the same workouts. There may be one or two salt and peppered in, but I think a lot of it is going to be new. It's going to be fresh. It's going to be challenging. Coaches have done a great job of bringing in new and fresh ideas here. And one thing that we are adding on, and I'm hoping Mitch has done, he has actually done a little bit of work on organizing all this, is the multi-sport add-on. So Mitch, can you tell us how you feel that's going to go? And I know you and Ian have worked really hard on this portion of it.
Yeah, so we actually got some questions to the Facebook group on if we're going to start adding activities. So for the triathletes in the crowd, and we are. So Ian's put together a supplement or an add-on that's going to start adding in the swimming and the running. And we're going to continue that forward as we go through the lab and get more specialized plans and more of a traditional triathlon kind of approach that we can add on to the cycling. So you'll be adding on some running and swimming, but you'll also be taking away probably one of the bike workouts. Excellent.
And then the question becomes, is there anything special that people need to do between this lab? And Thea, what have we been telling those riders?
So the next lab that starts here on Monday is a great progression from where we are right now. We have been building up, and the way the next lab starts on week 1, it's in a way that you don't need to do anything special other than do the workouts that you're doing right now for this lab. Don't add anything, and start on Monday with the new lab. That should be perfectly fine with where you are in terms of fatigue and progression for training.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. We've tried to make this pretty seamless as far as the transition between the two if you continue the plans. And so with that, we will also be doing the group workouts like we normally have. Mitch is slated for Tuesday mornings. We have our current lab rider who got just under 100 riders on his first group workout mode ride, Stefan. So that's on Thursdays at 5:15 Eastern. Mitch's ride is at 5:30 Eastern. Taya's got her hot spot at noon at Eastern, and then on Sunday we've got the pedal action riders from Australia at 1400 Eastern with their workout. So it looks like the workout's going to be SST variation. It's a little bit on the short side. It's earlier in the week. It'll allow people to kind of get back into the groove of things for the week. So if you've got a chance to join us in those. I know that one last thing before we go as far as questions, as group workouts, we've been limited to how many we can put into the module. If it was up to us, all the coaches and all the really enthusiastic lab riders would jump in and have a group workout time. So I think the only other solution would be for you as lab riders to reach out to each other and say on the forum, for example, that I ride at 8 a.m. Eastern, let's say. I'm looking for others to ride with. And if you've watched any of the live streams that I do with one of our riders, Drew, we just meet at the start line. We load up the workout and we just go. And you've got it over Discord. You guys are doing almost the same thing. And we can help you out with that. So maybe a post to see how and explain how riders can more easily ride together could be useful, but right now it's a limitation kind of the beast as far as putting workouts in. So we apologize for that, and like I said, if it was up to us, we'd be able to put more group workouts in the module. So, but at this time we're limited to the 4 that we have. So, okay, we've just got a couple closing remarks here. I'm going to throw it to Andrea as far as our transition between the pre-lab here into the base lab. So, Andrea, what have you got?
Me?
Yeah, your challenges to participants. I know you had one last week. I don't know if was this note a rollover from the weeks past as far as a challenge to the participants.
Oh, I was gonna. How's everyone getting on with adding 1 or 2 changed things every week? But also, if none of you have seen the Share Your Dinner post on the forum, I'd invite you to get involved because there's some really good ideas coming out and some top meals. So have a look on the forum, folks.
Yeah, so try to do that after you've already either created yours and take a photo, because if you go before, you're just going to make yourself hungry. So definitely there. All right, that's looking good. Looks like we've hit all our topics today. I hope you've really enjoyed this show. I want to thank the coaches for their time. It's going to be a really exciting week as we transition into the next lab. We hope you all join us. If you have not yet joined us and you are thinking about it, go to endurancelab.fit. If you have any questions, reach out to us. We're more than happy to answer, and we look forward to seeing everyone in the Endurance Lab in the next week. With that, and from the coaches here, I want to say thank you for joining us, and we will see you in the Endurance Lab.